Greetings everyone, and welcome to our webinar on supervision matters. And I hope I'm audible and visible. Great. So, yes, myself, Sri Rajiv, and I am a therapist at Twashtri, and I will be your moderator for this evening. Before we start, I was thinking of asking you guys a couple of questions. You guys can respond in the chat box or you can unmute yourself. I wanted to ask how many of you here are already practicing, and how many of you here are yet to start practicing as a therapist? Okay, you're already practicing, you have to start. Great. Uh, yes, yet to start. Great. So that gives me an idea of our audience. Thank you for that. So now I would like to introduce our facilitator for this evening, Miss Rupali Das. She is a therapist and the founder of Swastri. She completed her education in the University of Delhi, and she had also taught there for a while before completely stepping into therapy and founding Swastri. Ma'am's practice is grounded in the paradigm of Indian psychology and the nuances of integral yoga psychology. Welcome to our discussion, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Rajiv, and a very warm welcome to all the participants who joined us in the evening.
Yes. So, yes, guys, before we start, I would like to say that we have prepared certain themes for discussion, and we will go ahead with that. And when we are discussing these themes, if you guys have any questions, any doubts, you can drop it in the chat box. And after these themes, we'll be opening it up for discussion. I'd request everybody to keep it interactive and engage with the webinar. And also towards the end, we'll be providing you guys with with the material which will be helpful that you guys can use before you start seeking supervision or before you figure out what kind of supervision you're looking for. So stay till the end for that. And yes, to begin with, ma'am, one question even I had before we started our journey together is that when we say supervision matters, what are we talking about? Because this word gets thrown around a lot, supervision. Is it therapy for therapists or is it something else? This question I've always had. So I thought we'll open with that.
Absolutely, Rajiv. And this is, I think, one of the most important question to understand and to reflect on to what is really supervision. Because as the landscape of mental health is there in India, we often confuse it with therapy, right? So, in short, if I have to describe what supervision may feel like, would be it is a mix of being um, a teacher and a therapist together, but not looking at you as a client, right? So supervision largely there are many frameworks of supervision that are followed across different countries, different supervision trainings for different sectors as well. So mental health also follows different supervision practices, frameworks. And what supervision really means is when you are starting your practice as a therapist, or even if you have practiced as a therapist for many years, you can still seek supervision. So supervision may have, so there are different frameworks. One framework focuses more onto the component part of it, where you understand, how do you understand your clients, what techniques can you use, how do you read the therapeutic setting, how do you read the therapeutic room, what do you observe, how do you observe, and many such nuances into the whole work itself. Of course, a lot of it is something that you would have already studied when you were studying, either clinical psychology or counseling psychology. But to see it in practice, is where supervision helps you with the nuance of how do you translate it into practice, right? The second framework is more of it's one of my favorite frameworks to practice as a supervisor is that's by Hawkins and Shehot. And it is more of a process oriented framework where the therapist who is in the therapy room, which, who is the supervisee in the supervision session. So there are different components into the supervision session. You look at the client, you look at the therapist, who is now your supervisee, and you also look at the supervisor. So it's a whole process approach where we are looking at how are we being held, right? So if I have to describe what supervision is, supervision largely would have these three facets. You are being held as a supervisee, but you are not being uh, therapized, if I may use the word, right? Therapy is separate, where you're working on your own issues. But in a supervision session, let's say you're working with a client and something has come up in you. So your supervisor's job is to hold that in awareness for you. That, hey, this has happened, and perhaps this might be coming up within you. Maybe you want to address this too, right? They may not be your therapist here. They may not say that, look, what work you need to do with it. They will just open the gate for you. Now, after this, how do you want to deal with it? It might be something that you want to take up in your personal therapy. It might be something that you were already aware of. You were already aware of that part of you, but you were just not aware that it was coming up in this context. So the supervision helped you see that, okay, there's this part of me. I know it, it's a little bit vulnerable, but it was what came up in the therapy session. And that was the reason I wasn't, completely present. Right. So one is supervision will help you. The supervision session will largely be where you are held as a therapist, as your identity as a therapist, right? Your identity there is not of a client. Your identity is still as a therapist. There. A session helps you see yourself and your own processes more clearly. Unlike a client who would understand their internal processes, here the focus would be more of the interpersonal processes of how are you holding your client? What helps you? What is your, we talk about something is developing the self of the therapist. So your supervision session will help you define what is the definition of the self of the therapist for you, right? What is the therapist self for you? Is the second thing. The third thing is where supervision is not a judgment. It's not a judgment of how good you are as a therapist. It is not a comment on what framework, what paradigm of practice, you are using. Is it correct? Is it not correct? But largely an understanding of that there are certain things which are working out for you, whichever paradigm that you're using right, which are working for you as a therapist here, right? Vis-a-vis understanding that there might be certain other things that you can still develop. You can still, progress into developing within yourself. So a good supervision session would largely give you these three things: a space where you are held, you are not judged, you are not taught there, you are not commented on, a space which helps you develop your own self of the therapist, which is different from being a client in the therapy session, right? Of course, being a client in the therapy session, you are understanding your own internal processes. In a supervision session, you are understanding how do you play out in front of a client. What makes you do something? What makes you choose something? Do you have a reason? Like often in supervision sessions, the supervisor goes on to ask, okay, you chose to hold this space in such a way with your client. What made you do that? It's not a comment, it's not a judgment, it's more of a reflection on why, which process within me was triggering it. Was I completely aware of it? or was I doing something unknowingly? It worked out, but I don't know how. So, in a way, you're also learning about yourself, about if you have an intuitive tendency. You are learning that I have this tendency. And lastly, when I say it helps you develop the self of the therapist, certain times we are all trained in certain methodologies, certain, I would say practices. Like you are a more of a psychodynamic practitioner or a behavioral therapist. But it may happen that during your process, when you are taking clients, something else within you, which is more innately you, is developing. Let's say a lot of therapists end up exploring movement, exploring music, exploring drama, exploring different, breadth of experiences to bring into their therapy session as well. So a supervision session may help you build onto that. That, okay, this is also a part of you. And maybe you can, develop it in certain ways. So a supervisor is more of a co-creator with you rather than somebody who um, comes, of course, they come with their own practice and their own understanding and their own, expertise. But when they're sitting with their supervisee, it's more of, I am trying to understand your world through your lens. And of course, I've seen that world a little bit more than you. So I might be able to hold space for that also that you haven't seen, right? So if I was, and you can tell me if I was able to bring out the difference, and it's a very nuanced difference between therapy and supervision, because at some point of time I've seen people literally confusing, even supervisors confusing that space with therapy, where you end up telling your supervisee about, taking their inner world and their internal world and exploring that too much. Of course, a part of it is explored in supervision sessions, but too much of it is perhaps, the space of therapy for them.
Thank you for that, ma'am. So, if I have to understand it, if I have to put it out there, can we say supervision is a space where you develop yourself as a therapist while also making space for what relationally happens between you and the client in your therapy room? That is also being brought here. And to an extent, your inner world also, but with a certain limit, is what we'll be exploring as a supervisor and a supervisee. So
Yes.
this brings a question to my head. We often talk about feeling stuck with our clients, feeling stuck or not knowing which direction to proceed in, or maybe working with a difficult client, not able to work with their inner world. So, where does supervision come in terms of these areas?
Okay, so feeling stuck, yes, would largely be addressing where you are feeling stuck. So that is where a lot of content of the inner world would come. But like I said, a supervisor's job is to just make you aware of it, not work through it with you, right? That is where your supervisor will become your therapist, where they start working on the inner world with you. Isn't that what we do in therapy, right? But the moment the supervisor is able to bring up that part, it gives you a sense of autonomy. And at the end of the day, this is what we are trying to build autonomy within. And there's also a framework in psychology, is perhaps the oldest one for supervision, is, they give a developmental model of supervision, and they say the intention or the objective of supervision is to make an early career therapist go from being anxious to being settled, to having no autonomy to developing autonomy, right? So they use these two markers largely. So if you are too anxious, your autonomy is of course less. If your anxiety is released, it's less, your sense of autonomy increases. And the last one is here, more of your skill set, right? And naturally, at the base of it is your skill set. If you are more skilled, you become less anxious and you're more autonomous in your therapy sessions, right? So coming back to this idea that when you feel stuck, of course seeking supervision is a healthy way of understanding that why, where is it coming from. And like I said, supervision, ideally, a good supervision, will not be a place where you are judged for your, um, for your work as a therapist. It is for you to bring out rather all the parts that, hey, I'm being stuck here. I have tried these 5 ways, which I knew, I've read in the book. I tried exploring, but something is not happening. Your supervisor will inquire with you at different levels. What's happening with the client? Maybe it is a difficult client. Maybe you are seeing this kind of client for the first time and you don't have enough of history or enough of, material about it. You're dealing with this for the first time. And it's not an internal problem there. It's more of a logistical, informational problem. So that is the supervisor's job to bring awareness to that maybe you are not stuck at an internal level. Maybe it's more of a logistical, informational thing. Why don't you read about this? Or why don't you explore this particular part with them? Maybe you are looking at the client in a certain way because you didn't even have a different frame of reference here. So the supervisor will help you find a frame of reference. At the end of the therapy, this is, yeah, at the end of the supervision work, this is what you get, a frame of reference for yourself. And it keeps on enlarging, right? If you read certain of the therapists, their own account, let's say you read Fisher, who was the Gestalt therapist, mm, Fritz account, and if you read, um, the Gifts of Therapy book by who's the existential therapists, right? His own account. They all say, they all admit that they have been to supervision at different points of time in their lives because they were always evolving, and we are always evolving as therapists. Yalom, yes, thank you, Kathy. Yes, Yalom's work. So they are constantly going for supervision. Now, over the period of time, you also start understanding when do you need supervision versus when do you need therapy. I'll give you a context to it. When you need supervision versus when you need therapy. Let's say you are practicing for some time, and I'm taking you are practicing it for some time, and you come across one client or two clients where you are not able to, either make sense of it or you're not as effective. That is context one. Okay. Now there is the second context. You have been practicing for some time, but off late you have been feeling very low. You have not been able to present in your sessions, no matter how good will you have. You're trying to hold up, right? You know the work, you know the job, you know what to look for, but you're not able to bring yourself to do that. You're not able to be effective with your clients, and it's not a matter of knowing. Probably you're still able to see everything, but you're not able to be effective. Now, if I ask, and this is a question for the group, in context one, what do you need? And in context two, what do you need? What do you think you need? You can answer in the chat box. What do you think you need in context one? You're able to work, but with one or two clients, you're not able to be effective. And the second is you're able to see everything, but you're not able to, be effective with overall impact. Perfect. I think a lot of them got the idea. Fair? Yes. Perfect. Yes. So supervision for the first context, because you are stuck with one or two spaces and you are trying to figure out, okay, how can I be more effective? Yes, Rajil, you had a question.
No, 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 ma'am. I was just clapping for them.
Oh, great, great. Okay. Yes, so I think I was able to answer the question you asked?
Yes, yes, ma'am. I think a lot of clarity was delivered with that, and I got better context for that. So similarly, like the audience. Now addressing the larger population of our meeting, we have a lot of people who are yet to start. So if I go back to the time when I hadn't started taking clients, it was like one, if I want to start taking clients, what do I do? Because I have done my degree, I know the techniques, I know the theory, but still I wasn't confident enough to start on my own. So if I'm just out and I want to start my private practice, what is the procedure? What should I do? Because I always keep hearing, whenever you start private practice, you need a supervisor. Do not start without a supervisor, is all I've been hearing. So how do I go about it? How do I go about starting my own practice or beginning therapy?
Right. Okay, so let me reframe your question through an imagery, through a metaphor. Okay. So, like you said, when you start your work, you have studied the theories, you have, probably done some model practice and in your colleges, and you feel you can start, right? So it's like you have learned swimming in a swimming pool, and now you are in the sea, you are in front of the sea, and you're saying, okay, अभी क्या करूं मैं? Swimming आता है मुझे, I know, but is it safe to dive? What should I do? Isn't it? That's how we will picturize it, right?
100%.
So, there is no ideal answer to it. And I wouldn't say that, there is one single way to go ahead with it. Of course, different people have different capacities also when they start. Different level of maturity. Some people have done their masters at 22, some people have done it at 27, 28. Again, it's not just age, it's your life experiences also. So there are many things that actually develop the therapist in question and in practice here. So we need to consider all of them, right? I have taught students and I've seen 19 years old being very mature. And I've seen 35-year-old being still struggling with that maturity that's needed in the therapy room, right? So, there is no right answer. So, what I would say is, you are standing in front of the sea. You have to first understand what are the means that you have, your means, and it's important, right? When I say means, is if you start as a private practitioner, yes, you will have autonomy, but with the autonomy will come a very large part of responsibility as well. Let's say you start practicing and you get a client who comes with no such, clinical complaints to begin with, no assessments, no background, and you start working with them for basic anxiety. And in 2-3 sessions, you realize कि भाई इसकी anxiety तो सिर्फ anxiety है ही नहीं. They have certain tendencies which probably fall under, let's say, bipolar or falls under borderline personality. Now, what do I do about it? Right? So that would be when you start in the sea and you feel नहीं मुझे swimming आता है, let me just start. मुझे swimming आता है, let me, I'll just go start dipping my feet and start, probably floating, and I'll get a hang of it. A good way would be first to assess what the sea is, what are the conditions of the sea. Right? Are you diving into the Bay of Bengal? Are you diving into the Arabian Sea? A Bay of Bengal is far more complicated, has very high and low tides, very unpredictable. Fair. Uh, has a greater depth than the Arabian Sea. Arabian Sea is relatively more predictable. So the context matters. Where are you practicing as a private practitioner? What messaging are you giving to your clients who are coming to you? Is it more like, oh, I deal with anxiety also, I deal with this also, I deal with that also? Or you are saying, as of now, I'm opening my work, let's say, for, 15 to 25 years old. Again, you can't be sure that 15 to 25 is, fairly um, easy population. And when you say I work only with moderate, mild to moderate depression, your client doesn't know that they have mild to moderate depression or severe depression. That's your job again to check, right? So first is assess where you are practicing. Who are you opening your services to? Second is figure out your own skill sets. You learn swimming, yes, that's the basic of entering into the sea. But also you need either maybe that swimming tube to begin with. If you want to float, you need a tube. What is your tube? What does it look like? Is it a peer supervision? Is it you have some teachers from your, where you have done your masters from, and they are ready to guide you a little bit here and there whenever you need help? Do you have like seniors from the profession who you feel you can reach out to as and when? Now I'm giving you more of a very practical and very what happens in India kind of a thing. I'm not giving you a very idealistic framework here. This should be the case. I'm telling you this is what usually happens and how can you prepare yourself. Okay. So the tube would be largely the peer support that you can get, the books that you can read, the teachers that you can reach out to, the seniors from the profession that you can reach out to, basic, system. The second would be the best, I would say, is if you could have a small fishing boat and you understood your boat, right? You know how to run this boat. You know what this boat's basic capacities, basic, um, system is. Now, this is where I would say at least a group supervision would help. If not, if you can't go for a personal supervision and individual supervision right away, a group supervision will make you for the basic boat that you need to go into the sea, right? Or you start working with someone. Let's say you join an organization, you join a place which already has a system in place. They have an intake process. They have a process of, how do you take therapy sessions? They have certain standard operating procedures. What happens if certain issues happen in the organization with respect to the client? The client is abusive, the client is not returning calls, is not coming back, the client is coming back and giving you hot and cold response, the client is contacting for an emergency session. All of these probably organization will have a standard operating procedure for, and once you join them, you are not pressurizing yourself with I have to formulate these guidelines for myself. But as an individual practitioner, you will need to formulate these guidelines for yourself. You need to have a standard operating procedure for yourself. From what time to what time do I see clients? How do they contact me? What is their intake procedure? How do we finalize onto the payments? How do, payments happen before the session, after the session? Um, how do we decide on to the continuity of therapy? What do I do when I don't want to see a client? I should also have an autonomy, as a therapist, to say that I don't want to work with you. Because most of the early career therapists, one problem that I've seen with them, they end up taking everybody as their client. And they don't know how to say no to somebody where it may not be okay, it's not a clinical condition or this, it's just that I'm not comfortable working with a client like this. So how do I decide that who do I want to work with, who do I don't want to work with? Because if you're not in, if you don't feel like you want to work, you won't be able to be present for the session as well, for the therapeutic work as well. Because it's a very inherently intimate work. You can't end up being, this, oh, I don't have any relationship with my client after they leave the therapy room. That never happens. We are humans, right? So, and the last one would be if you can, the final ship would be when, yes, you are practicing as a individual practitioner, but you know the waters, you are master at sailing, you know how to swim, you know what are your anchors, you know how to read the compass, you understand the winds, you probably understand the whole landscape. And I would say that's how a private practitioner should feel like or would feel like in a healthy setting. And I've seen many young people wanting to start private practice. You want to become the ship, but what takes you from being somebody who's been trained in a swimming pool to becoming a ship is something you have to decide. Of course, there are no hard and fast rules, but understand that it's a journey, it's a process. You can start making you building your ship from day one, or you may understand that I want to start with the tube or start with, a small being on somebody else's boat for a while, learn how to ride a boat, how to read the compass, how to navigate the waters, how to read the waters, wind, and then move ahead. So these are the ways in which you can start your work.
Beautiful metaphor, ma'am. It did truly feel like jumping into the sea at the start. Took a lot of grounding after that. So, yes. So, ma'am, in this topic, I would like to, for a while, little while, I would like to ask them if they have any questions because they are all starting out. So, I would ask them if they have any questions. Otherwise, we can move on to the next thing. So, guys, if you guys have any questions, you guys can unmute yourself or type in the chat box. Ma'am would answer.
You can unmute yourself as well if you feel like asking. Right.
Yes, please go on.
I hope I'm audible. If there's too much background noise in my environment, please do let me know.
No worries, Sushmita. You're audible. Go ahead.
Um, so when we were talking about supervision and therapy and when each would work, this is a very personal conundrum I've been dealing with. So I'm in my last semester. I only have my semester exams left and everything. So I've tried venturing out into pro bono counseling, and I've tried a lot of peer counseling as well as a part of my master's and out of my own personal interest. And along, yeah, as Raji was discussing earlier, this feeling of stuckness, for me personally, it comes with a lot of anxiety about not doing a good job. And அப்பா மியூட் பண்றீங்களா டிவி yeah, I hope it gets better now. As I was saying, that feeling of stuckness, it comes with a lot of anxiety for me about not doing a good job. And 1 minute I'm present with the client, and the next minute I'm on an overthinking spiral. And now this seems like ideally a typical situation where it would be better if the same supervisor is also the therapist. But I have been in long-term psychotherapy for the past 6 years ish almost. So how do I go on about addressing this? And I'm very nervous to start taking clients. And the insight I've gotten from you so far is that I have to jump in and start seeing clients in order to face this anxiety. But this anxiety is not letting me start taking clients, if that makes sense. Thank you.
Yes, Sushmita. So that's true for any experience in our life that we may contemplate on it as much as we want to. That if I'll be a good therapist, if I'll be a good teacher, if I'll be a good coder, whatever it is that you are doing, you will have to start with at least putting your feet into the sea. However, I would ask you to understand what are you going into the sea with. Are you going in with a tube as a floater? Are you going in with a small boat? Are you going in with, somebody else's ship? What are you going in with? Right? This feeling that we have that I want to start somewhere, and we end up taking up private practice right away. Because I understand there are not enough, good spaces in therapy in India. However, I would still say there are still spaces. If you could explore them, you would at least find something to begin with, right? Uh, Maybe not therapy spaces right away. You can start with working with some NGOs, right? Where they have some SOP, some model of reference, some frame of reference. Fair. And you can start working with them for a number of clients, even because you're doing pro bono anyway, right? So maybe that would be in a way that you are honing your skills. You are seeing, you are reflecting onto yourself as a therapist. How are you being present? How are you not being present? What is happening to you? And so far and so forth, right? If you feel you want to start with your own private practice, then yes, a group supervision or an individual one-on-one supervision with a supervisor would be helpful who is different from your therapist. And I would say this because your therapist is working with you on something else. If Again, I'm not saying it's a complete no or a complete yes. It all depends on capacities of individuals. Fair. If your therapist feel that they can hold a separate space for you as a supervisor, because there they have to meet you as a co-creator, as somebody who is leveled in the field. There we cannot have this, a client and a therapist approach. Right? The way I'm talking to you right now, assuming you are a professional. I'm not your teacher, I'm not your therapist, I'm not any of that. I'm just saying, okay, you have anxiety, and that's normal. We all have had that when we started, but these are the ways you can go about it. Fair? What is bringing out the anxiety in you, like you said, is this fear of if I'm doing it right. A fear of evaluation within the therapeutic work itself. Now, where does that root from is perhaps something you can discuss in your therapy sessions. Can have this fear of evaluation within the therapeutic work also. It's almost like your client is coming and telling you, no problem. Your client is coming and telling you that, hey, I have anxiety when I work. I'm talking to my manager and I'm thinking that I'm doing it right. I'm talking to a client for sales and I'm just thinking about am I a good salesperson? Am I doing the thing right? It's more so like that when you're talking to your supervisor. And your supervisor will bring out gently, okay, which part of you is saying that? And that part, how do you wish to address? So there's a lot of autonomy there. Unlike a therapist who would say, okay, that part of you, let's try to bring it out and let's explore that part and see, you know, where all it is coming from. So that's the nuance difference between a therapist and a supervisor. I would say it is good for you if you can keep a supervisor different from a therapist. It also helps keep the status quo at, leveled up. Otherwise, you feel too vulnerable and too explored, exposed to just one person, and they are also human beings. Because they know you as a therapist, they might start, commenting on you as a therapist. Because the status quo is naturally being built there. A therapist trying to help another therapist. Right? So that would be my personal take. But again, depends on the competency of who that person is. If they can hold, you will have to have a conversation with them about it, that this is what I need from you. In supervision sessions, again, you need to know what you need in your supervision sessions, which is different from being a client. Right. So, and if they say that, yes, I can hold these two, spaces for you separately, fair. Or sometimes I've seen somebody has been in therapy with someone, a therapist for long. They are no longer in therapy. It has been some time. And then they want to go back to them because they really like their processes and they would like to, bring that into their own work. So there, I think after a gap you're no longer working with them, then you can meet them as a therapist for supervision. that may work out. I hope I was able to answer your questions, Shweta.
Great. Yes, ma'am. She has responded in the chat box that she has gotten it. And we have another question in the chat box. It is from Sevita. She has asked, what role does therapy modality of the therapist play? Is it like you need to know which you're going with, for example, like EFT psychoanalysis, or is it something you can figure out as you go?
Fair, then that's a very, very important question. So, a therapist's, a supervisor's frame of reference ideally can be anything as long as it is providing you the supervision that you need. So, for example, your supervisor's frame of reference or paradigm of practice is psychoanalytical in nature, and you are a CBT practitioner. Right? You practice more from the lens of CBT. Now you are looking for supervision, but you are saying, no, no, I will only go to a CBT practitioner because they will understand my frame of reference, right? Now there are two things that are happening. One is you might get, yes, a familiarity with their approach and they can understand what you're doing, why you're doing. But the second thing might be that a psychodynamic approach could have given you more of reflection onto the relational part and the part about transference and counter transference, which is CBT, paradigm will not give you. There. So when we start looking for our supervisors, we often say, "Oh, I want to have supervision from somebody who practices this modality only." You want to have supervision from somebody who knows how to supervise. And their paradigm can be anything as long as they are able to hold space for you and your practice. Mind it, again, if I am somebody who practices from an integral yoga psychology paradigm and consciousness based paradigm, and somebody is coming with a psychoanalytical framework to me, I don't need to tell them that, hey, why don't you, use my paradigm and you do it this way? No, I need to honor that here is a person who likes to practice from a psychoanalytical point of view. And I'm here to assist them to look at their relational work from different lenses. That means, yes, as a supervisor, I need to know a little bit about psychodactical work and a little bit about, CBT work. I need to know that. And as a supervisor, again, that would be where, as a supervisor and supervisee, we agree on what do we need from these sessions. If you want to learn certain techniques, and you are in supervision only to learn the techniques, then you need to find the person who practices from whatever you're planning to learn. You want to learn EFT, you need somebody, and it's more of a training then. It's not supervision. It is a training process. You have to understand that. A training is different from supervision. Supervision is where you assume that this person is already practicing with certain means. This person already has an idea which paradigm, which frame of reference, which practice they naturally fall in, and they are open to exploring others as well, maybe in the process, or they are not. Again, a supervisor will see who my supervisee is. Are they open to exploring more things? If they are, my supervision it would involve giving them a taste of different things and an invitation to, hey, would you like to also know a little bit about the gestaltian work or the narrative work, right? Or if I sense my supervisee just wants to use a CBT lens, one just wants to keep it that way, fair, then I will guide them accordingly, right? So, what practice do you need your therapist, your supervisor to have is more of, is your supervisor able to hold that space for you? Is your supervisor, it's like your supervisor is going to be the potter. If you say, oh, but has this potter ever worked with ceramics? Or they only work with soil? Have they worked with red soil? Have they worked with this particular pink soil? There's no one potter who would have worked with every particular material. But if they have the skill of the potter, they know where the nudge is needed. They know relatively how the clay feels when it is ready to be formed into a cup or a vase. Again, you say, is the potter ko vase banana aata hai ki nahi? They to only make cups and plates. I've never seen them making a vase. You go to them. If they have the capacity to turn you into a vase, they'll do that. But it's again a relational process. You will also have to give them some time to relate to you and give you what they offer, and accordingly you can feel if you are being held in the way that you want it to be held, if you are being shaped in a way where you feel I really aspire to be a vase, and is my therapist able to listen to it that I aspire to be a vase and not a cup, right? Good supervisors also tell you at some point of time that, hey, I feel that you've gotten everything from me, and from here it would be better if you go to somebody else, or this person may be a better guide from you for your supervisor for you from here.
Yes, ma'am. She has responded with a thumbs up, so I'm hoping the answer was clear. So, ma'am, we can, yeah, she has responded. Thank you so much, ma'am.
And
So, before we move on to our final theme, to everybody who have participated, guys, I would be sending a WhatsApp group link. You can treat this as a peer group, and you guys can join if you'd like to know more about us. We'll be sending our webinars and our programs over there, and we will also be sending material often with regards to practice, therapy, etc. So if you guys are interested, you can join this WhatsApp group. I'll be sending the link. And as for the next theme, ma'am, so we've covered what supervision is, uh, how do we differentiate between supervision and therapy. We have also touched a little bit upon what I'm going to ask. What do I look for when I'm trying to find a supervisor for myself?
right. So like I tried to explain in the last point itself, what a good supervision session would look like and what a good supervisor would look like, right? So one thing is understand, why are you going for supervision? What is your need? And that involves a little bit of reflection from your end also. If you are there to learn techniques and your supervisor is taking you through the process, then there will be a clash. Then you would say, Arey, this person doesn't know how to supervise. They're not giving me any techniques. They're just focusing on, process. Fine. Maybe the supervisor is amazing. They are bringing you to the process, right? So first is understanding what is your intention, because techniques is something that you can go to books for, you can go to trainings for. There are a lot of trainings, like there's EFT training, there's CBT training, there is workshops happening on different modalities, techniques, right? Even in Indian psychology and integral yoga, we do workshops that and those are largely for trainings, right? You understand how to practice, which tool, technique, how will you use it, where will you use it, things like that. Now, a supervisor, on the other hand, is more like a guide, a check post for you. Okay? It's like the what do you say, the light tower. You have started swimming in the sea and you can't see in the middle of the thing. You go to the light tower, you see where is the light tower, right? The tower is there, rotating on its own. It's guiding. Okay. So supervisor is not somebody you would go every moment you are finding a problem in therapy, you are going to your supervisor. आज ये हो गया therapy session. आज वो हो गया therapy. Your supervisor is not your therapist, not your personal therapist, right? They are not there to hold every emotion and everything that you are going through. They are there to hold you as a therapist. What are you doing in the therapy session? Why did you choose to do something? Why did you not choose to do something? What made you approach this client in a certain way? Where are you planning to take this forward? How are you planning to take this forward? What does your blueprint print look like? Um, how is your self of the therapist evolving over the period? You may be using 500 different techniques, and your supervisor is okay with it. Your supervisor is not saying, "Arey nahi, you should use CBT here, you should use REBT here, you should use a narrative technique here." They are not there for that. But they can time and again tell you that you can, use this kind of inquiry here maybe. But it is you leading. You are the one who are deciding how are you going to take the client forward. And where you are stuck, your supervisor is going to just nudge you into, okay, what is stucking you? Is it an internal process? Is it in the therapeutic alliance, there is an issue? Is it an issue that you are seeing for the first time within the client itself? It's more of a, client related, information related, logistics related issue. Where is the issue lying? There. So a good supervisor be more would help you be more present in your own therapy sessions at the end of the day. That, finally, if you ask what should I look for in a good supervisor is able to hold you as a practitioner, as a therapist, without judging you, without directing you also. A lot of supervisors end up directing their supervisee. Use this technique, use this, you know, this is how you should be doing it. Supervision is not completely direct, right? There is some, maybe a level of direction where you're nudging that, hey, why would you like to take your client this way and not that way, right? Have you thought about that, option of going in those directions? What implication does it have on your client and on you if you were to take the third path? So it's like a reflection within the reflection. It's a meta reflection of your own therapy session. What did you do? Why did you do it? What were you feeling in that moment? If you were feeling uneasy, where it is coming from? Okay, it's coming from an internal space of this. Okay, how do you plan to handle it now? Would you like to explore it on your own? Would you like to take this up in your therapy session? Would you like to be aware of it right now, but find a way so that it doesn't happen, or obstruct into your therapy sessions? You can choose whatever you like to, right? And finally, the third one would be if the supervisor is able to build you into who you want to be, not themselves. It's not like, oh, I'm your supervisor, so I'll make another Rupali out of you. No, you will have your own processes. Rajiv will have his own persona as a therapist. When he enters into the room, client feels very differently from when Rupali enters into the room. And my job is to make you comfortable with that, of your own presence. My job as a supervisor is to make you understand what is your presence. So what do you bring? Right? How can you own it? So a good supervisor will give you that. That's my take.
Yes, ma'am. That is a very good answer. And if I may, this is how it felt for me in the beginning when I started taking supervision after joining. Because for me, I was looking for someone who would tell me, sail the ship right, sail the ship left. But I didn't know what I needed was the confidence to sail it myself, not someone to be my compass. So that is a reflection I had. And we're almost at 8, but I think we can have a few questions for another 5 minutes. If anybody has any questions, we're open for it. And before that, so guys, everybody, each and every one of you have taken your time out today to join us. So as a thank you, we would like to send you guys a worksheet that you can fill for yourself. Nobody's going to, you can evaluate. It's a reflective worksheet on supervision, on what supervision is, what you might be looking for, might give you clarity on where you are in seeking supervision or yeah. So I'll be sending it both in the WhatsApp group and in the chat. You may access it. And now we'll open it for discussion if any of you have any questions.
Any of you have any questions, please feel free to ask. You can, um, be as raw in your questions. There's nobody judging you, and I understand the anxiety it is, therefore, um, anybody who's starting out.
So we have a response. Ah, yes, someone was speaking. Please go on.
Yes, ma'am. As someone, many of us are yet to start our pro bono sessions or any of our sessions. I wanted to ask you is I already have a supervisor and everything, and the poster and everything's ready. But I find that many of the students who have already started their pro bono sessions are facing the problem of, like in my colleagues, that they take in clients which are like too many. So, what would you say is someone who's going to start their pro bono sessions? What is ideal number? Is there an ideal number of clients? I might be wrong.
Yes, Sarah, a very important question is to understand what is your appetite as a therapist, right? So, an appetite is something that is built over the period of time, but it is also something that you will have a sense of when you begin with, right? If let's say you are meeting two clients in a day and you are feeling full in the sense, emotionally, energetically, you're feeling full. I've been present with two people. The third person is a little too much for me. Fair? Then I would probably say no to the third person and I will only work with those two clients till whatever time their sessions are going on. And I will slowly start building my appetite, right? A lot of early career therapists ends up taking 7, 8 sessions in a day, 10 sessions also in a day. I've heard from, kids taking 10 sessions in a day. And that is a number I would never ask you to go. Start with 2 to 3 clients because that is humanly, that is the max you can actually have a conversation with someone, we being completely present. And also, it gives you enough time to hone your skills, to be reflective, because you will have to do a lot of inner work also in the process, right? So, maybe for the first 2 to 3 months, start with 2 to 3 clients in a day, and then see if you can, reach to a limit of 4 to 5. Usually, as practitioners, yes, there are guidelines and there are, researches also which say that 5 is a good number for any therapist to work at a rate, at a place where they are not emotionally drained, right? As somebody myself who have been practicing for, years, I also see a maximum of 5 clients. If I have to stretch myself and I really have to stretch, I can probably take a 6, but I don't go beyond it. Anytime, nothing beyond 6. I'm not meeting more than 6 people, 6 stories, 6 energies more than 6 in a day. And the next day is an off for me then if I'm meeting 6 clients. Right. Usually 2 to 3, 3 to 4 is a good number of clients because every client that you're meeting, understand this, you are also energetically depleting yourself. आप एक इंसान का खाना नहीं खाते हो, you're eating 3 people's food then. Right? It's literally that level of energy goes into holding space for somebody else. And it takes a toll onto your physical health, onto your emotional health, onto your mental health, everything. Right? So, to assess your appetite, I would say start with 2, gradually see if you can move to 3. Over the years, build an appetite for 5. And any place which is asking you, any organization which is asking you to meet more than 6 clients in a day, please resign. and tell them that, this is not a good ethics. And maybe that is something that we as a practitioner also need to, voice out. If we don't voice out, companies are being run for profit, and they will be run for profit. And they will say, yes, you leave, we will find somebody else, fair. But they will miss on actually onto a good therapist, and that's their loss. A therapist who can hold on to their own ethics, their own energy, their own understanding is far better as a therapist than somebody who's just working for someone else just to earn money. Yes, money is a part of it, very important part of it, not denying it at all. But you can also practice in the realm of ethics, and we'll have to build it, together. There are these kind of organizations I'm aware of. Some of my own students told me that they were taking 8 to 10 sessions in a day. Poor fellows, they felt sick within 2 months, I think, and no horrible condition. At the end of the day, you leave only such places, right? So to begin, a 2 to 3 is a good number.
Great. So, ma'am, we have some responses in the chat box. I would like to read them.
Sure.
So Sevita has said no questions, but would really like to appreciate Rupali ma'am for clearing a lot of critical questions. I think I learned quite a bit from this session, and the metaphors effectively drove home many points. Special thanks to Rajiv for moderating. Thank you. And we have a question by Thalia. I hope I pronounced that right. Is there a specific frequency in meeting your supervisor, like once every month, or per the number of clients or something? I think it's about like once. Yes, ma'am.
Right, right. So this kind of a matrix is actually, there are a lot of researchers on this. You can actually go out and read on this also. So it depends on two things. What has been your experience? So if it's an early career therapist versus a therapist who has been working for 3 to 5 years, largely, their requirements are different, right? Because how they handle a session and how much they get stuck, or they find issues, will also be different, right? So, for an early career therapist, it's usually said that it is one supervision session for every 5 to 7, one supervision session for every 5 to 7 sessions that they take, right? In India, you can translate it into 1 to every 10 that they take, because again, supervision becomes expensive. You don't always have your supervisor present, and da da da. But largely 5 to 7 sessions, by because these are 5 to 7 stories that you're holding, right? So one supervision session for every 5 to 7 supervision sessions is a great, space. For somebody who has been doing this for some time, 3 to 5 years, that's a mid-career therapist. For them, one for every 20 sessions that they take. So that would be a weekly. If they are taking 20 sessions, they need one supervision sessions for 1 or 2 hours is fine, right? So supervision has certain metrics, and I believe that those who are offering supervision sessions, they are aware of it, and they are, providing it in these ways. They are giving the details to their supervisees. But largely, for every 5 to 7 sessions, as an early career therapist, you need at least one supervision session. That's a minimum of 1.5 to 2 hours long, and that can be a group or an individual. Again, it's a choice. A group supervision also is very effective because you get to learn from different um, therapists, and an individual supervision session is effective because there's a relational bond between you and your supervisor as well. So that's a call for you as a therapist to decide.
All right. Great. So I hope everything is clarified and we are close to ending the session. I would like to take a moment and express my heartfelt gratitude to everybody for joining her, taking time to listen to us. And I would also like to thank Rupali ma'am for holding space for us and answering all our questions so patiently. And I personally do look forward to seeing everybody's journey as to everybody starts practicing. So thank you everybody for joining.